500 years after the fall of the Roman Empire, the occupants of Rome, who lived among the crumbling arches and colossal edifices, were so amazed at the huge scale of the buildings that they thought Rome had been built by giants. Yet according to writers who visited Rome at the height of its magnificence, it wouldn't have been the scale of the beautiful city that would have struck you. Instead, it would have been the powerful scent of roses. On Roman streets, especially at the height of festivals like the Floralia, huge numbers of blooms filled pavements, awnings, and fountains. Roses became a status symbol and an intoxicating emblem of sensuality. The quantities of roses used at civic and imperial occasions were so vast that the philosopher and statesman Seneca railed against the expense, particularly the absurdity of shipping Egyptian roses to garnish winter banquets. But the ships kept coming. In Rome, beauty trumped finances. According to Roman mythology, the white rose first sprang forth during the birth of Venus, the goddess of love. Red roses were created when she cut her ankle on some thorns. At feast times, fountains spewed rose water, and blooms were thickly strewn about the squares. Roman gutters periodically produced water to clean the streets, and when roses were heavily used, an iridescent scum would form, which led to the discovery of rose oils. In the Middle East, a natural home of the rose, perfumery based around roses, saffron, oud, and amber was established 3,000 years ago. Rose perfumes were made from rose oil, also called attar of roses, which is a mixture of volatile essential oils obtained by steam distilling the crushed petals, and rose water, a byproduct of the process. Steam distillation is believed to have originated in Iran. In his writings, the 11th century physician Ibn Jazla states that rose water strengthened the gums and stomach, as well as being an antiemetic. Most highly valued in Arabic perfumery is the honeyed, spicy, and intensely complex Taif rose, Rosa damascena from the Taif Mountains in Saudi Arabia. It's darker, spicier, and sweeter than Turkish or Bulgarian rose. It's a rose grown at altitude in arid heat, with none of the softness of European roses. Its extract contains high levels of beta-damascenone, and it's highly treasured because it produces very low yields. Historically, it was prized in the Middle East for its divine aroma and symbolic associations with love and beauty. The firm of Amouage was established in 1983 by the Omani royal family with the aim to restore the 3,000-year-old tradition of perfume in Oman. Amouage comes from the Arabic amouage, waves, which is Gallicized to sound more like amour. The company produces some stupendous scents with a structure very different from classic French perfumery. Amouage hired Guy Robert to create scents using exceptionally high-quality raw materials without cost restrictions, in the tradition of increased concentrations of natural ingredients and reduced alcohol. Here is a sample collection of Amouage scents from 20-odd years ago. Today I want to look at Amouage Gold for Women and Amouage Gold for Men, both created by Robert. The Gold Women for the first hour reminds me of Guerlain's Chamade Parfum, but it's even richer and more delicious. All the Amouages take time to develop and remain delicious for hours as they evolve. These scents are dazzling, but have a delicacy and softness that give unique character. There is a huge rose note that is present from the beginning. It's not merely a top note, it continues to weave its magic throughout the life of the perfume. There are many high-quality ingredients working together here, and I agree with one reviewer who described the scent as insanely fabulous. I'll be discussing some of the problems rose materials present in perfumery, but I wanted to mention Amouage Gold because it illustrates why rose is so important. A remarkable perfume such as this could not exist without it. Even more interesting to me is Amouage Gold for Men, which would scarcely be considered a masculine by Western noses. Yet this is so marvellous that it would be a pleasure to smell on anyone. The rose is brilliant and prominent. It's balanced by mimosa, orris, animalics, and resins. Sometimes the most beautiful soft notes enhance masculines, like the powdery rose in Floris 89. Parfum Rosine made a rather wonderful masculine with Francois Robert's Rose d'Homme in 2005, with rosy leather, lavender, and patchouli. But in Gold for Men, the rose is elevated to the stratosphere. The dry down is very beautiful. A gentle orris mimosa lifts the rose, never allowing it to become stale or desiccated. 35 years ago, I became interested in growing roses at the house I'd moved into. The garden wasn't particularly big, but there was also room for 4 rose beds at the front of the house, and my interest expanded until I had over 200 roses growing and a large collection of books on roses. I grew lots of different varieties, many chosen for their incredible fragrance. I found that by confining yellow roses to a small corner of the garden, it was easy to mix colours and patterns. For most of the 20th century, breeders focused on the elegant pointed blooms of the hybrid tea rose. Novel colours were prized, and I became particularly interested in lilac roses, since there are no true blue roses. It might be surprising to hear that many of the modern varieties have a wonderful scent, like the rose lemon of Blue Moon, the damask of Double Delight, and the very beautiful fruity rose of Fragrant Cloud. I found some interesting colours like grey and beige, as well as the mauves. I had damask roses, with the same scent used in perfumery, as well as hybrid perpetuals and gallicas. As air quality improved over the last 60 years, lower levels of sulfur meant that the fungal diseases of roses like black spot, which was probably introduced into the breeding line of roses from the yellow rose Persiana, became much more prevalent. Breeders such as David Austin began a program of mixing old varieties with modern roses to produce beautiful flowers with old rose charm and excellent perfume. His roses are healthy, repeat blooming, with copious leaves. Roses have immense charm. Look at this variety from my old garden, Grace de Monaco. It was bred by the French grower Francis Mayon in 1956. This rose was presented to Grace Kelly on her wedding day. It has a lovely scent. It's interesting that a rose variety is propagated from a single plant, not from a seed, which means that this rose growing in my garden came from the same plant as the Bloom's Princess Grace carried on her wedding day. It's estimated that more than 70% of fragrances contain rose-related materials. The amount and type of materials varies greatly from scent to scent. Here are two fragrances that are described as abstract florals, which are also very important scents in the history of perfumery, Chanel No. 5 and Joy. What does abstract floral mean in perfumery? It means a scent that evokes an imaginative or blended impression of flowers, rather than reproducing a recognizable flower from nature. The ability of roses to add immense beauty and heavy flowery notes is invaluable in creative floral blends. Here I have various strengths of Chanel No. 5, an old civet heavy eau de cologne, the classic EDT. Oh dear, it looks as though Cuir de Russie has crept in by mistake. The EDP, which is Jack Polge's interpretation from the 1980s, and finally the Divine Parfum. My favourite is this parfum from 2004. No scent is more seamlessly blended and more Apollonian than Chanel No. 5. The effect is luxurious and modern, devoid of unnecessary embellishment. Parfum Chanel famously controls their own supply of rose de mer and jasmine. A high proportion of synthetic aldehydes in the scent was something new way back in 1921. These add radiance and vitality, making the scent matchless. Chanel has worked tirelessly to obtain the highest quality rose and other materials to maintain the status of Ernest Beau's groundbreaking masterpiece, which remains a top seller today. Here is some Joy Parfum from Patou from about 2010. Joy was created by Henri Almaras in 1930. This wonderful scent is perfectly named. The blend of roses, ylang, white flowers, and musk is monumental and memorable. The floral notes radiate beautifully throughout the life of the scent and never approach being cloying or overly sweet. Effectively, there are no base notes. The balance of the blend is brilliant. Bulgarian and May rose are pillars that form the foundation of this brilliant scent. You get the same exquisite rosy pollen hit as when you put your nose on a rose bloom in a warm garden. There's a hint of clove, cut banana, honey on toast, and endless musky white flowers. As the name suggests, it's a bouquet full of life and happiness. Rose oil has various names: rose otto, attar of rose, or rose essence. It's an essential oil that's extracted from the petals of various types of rose. The attars are extracted through steam distillation, while rose absolutes are obtained through solvent extraction, the absolute being used more commonly in perfumery. The production technique originated in Iran. Notwithstanding their high price and the arrival of organic synthetics, rose oils are still the most widely used essential oil in perfumery. Here is some rose oil from the olfactionary, prepared from damask and centifolia roses. The rose waxes have solidified since I keep it refrigerated. Major rose components are citronellol, up to 34%, geraniol, up to 22%, and nonadecane, up to 15%. Key rose components, no more than 2%, are beta-damascenone, beta-damascone, beta-ionone, and rose oxide. There are more than 10,000 rose species, but only 3 are employed in the commercial production of rose oil and absolute. Rosa damascena, the main crop of the world's largest producer, Bulgaria. Rosa centifolia, or Rose de May, is largely produced in Turkey or near grass, and Rosa gallica, the oldest of the roses, which is cultivated in Egypt. It's a rather romantic picture, rose workers collecting millions of fragrant blooms at dawn, just when the dew most heavily settles on the flowers. But of course the process is laborious, and the vast numbers of blooms required to produce rose concentrates. It takes roughly 10,000 individual roses, or 50 kilograms of fresh petals, just to produce 10 ml pure rose attar, ensures very high prices and the temptation to adulterate or dilute the finished products. Some so-called rose oils contain up to 90% geranium or Palma rosa to 10% real rose. Over the years I've picked up several rosy scents, which I've never wanted to wear, but have a lovely perfume suitable for scenting a room. They often have far more appeal than dedicated room scents. Here is an unusual smelling scent from Berdu, Eglantine raffinée, which is an old rose smell. I've gone through a bottle of this rosa from the amazing Santa Maria Novella shop in Florence. I picked up several scents when I visited there a few years ago. The shop is so beautiful that it's like a kind of temple to perfumery. This rosa is excellent for subtly freshening rooms. That roses carry a delicious scent is undeniable, but replicating good rose smells in perfumes is far from straightforward. Even high-quality rose extracts can present problems, as they're inclined to introduce unwanted, metallic, desiccated, and off notes. The complexity of the materials is no doubt part of the issue. In my opinion, many rose-heavy scents are difficult because the unwanted elements have not been blended out. Here are a couple of rather luxurious rose scents with issues: Creed's Fleur de Bulgarie and Serge Lutens Sa Majesté la Rose. The opening of the Lutens scent is stupendous, a remarkable true rose, rich, fruity, and briefly hyperreal. But after just a few minutes, the citronella note builds and builds. The scent progresses to a slightly acrid citronella rose. The smell of the anti-insect citronella candles is rather rank and unpleasant to my nose. Sa Majesté la Rose is somewhat tainted by it, unfortunately. Creed's Fleur de Bulgarie is interesting. Creed has claimed that this scent was made for Queen Victoria in 1845, but this appears to be untrue. The scent was worked on by Pierre Bourdon in the later part of the 20th century. The rose and ambergris dominate, and are both high quality. The effect is a sort of medicinal tincture, and the rose produces some rather odd effects, giving hints of paint and licorice. This is a distinctly Gothic scent, dark and unresolved. It suggests something that might have been added to Esté's knowing to give it even more depth. I rather like the ambergris with the rose. Nonetheless, this is a strange perfume. Coco Chanel is said to have told Ernest Beau that a woman should smell like a woman and not like a rose. For many years, women had been quite happy to wear the smell of violets or roses, but compared to sophisticated perfumes like Chanel No. 5, floral solifours are generally unsatisfactory. The rose and the violet need company. When they're blended with great skill, they impart wonderful qualities to perfumes. The move away from soliflors to modern complexity, which enhanced rather than masked the human body, was an important step forward in perfumery. Of course, roses and violet marry together beautifully. They're a favourite combination of mine. The violet freshens the grandeur of roses, making them powdery rather than dusty. Here are a couple of scents using the rose-violet combination: Yves Saint Laurent's Marvelous Paris and Drôle de Rose by Artisan Perfumer. With these two, it's difficult to say which is more dominant, the rose or the violet. Created by Sophia Grossman, Paris was introduced in 1983. Here is an EDT, EDP, and Parfum, all from the late 90s or early 2000s. The Parfum is intense and delicious, but it's the EDP that emanates swirling complexity. This is a huge rose-violet floral, voluptuous, heavenly, and fruity. I love to smell this, but I realize that some will see the scent as over the top, even vulgar. I think it's fun and actually has excellent balance, because of the green and mimosa notes. Like so many great perfumes, Paris is instantly recognizable. Drôle de Rose was composed by Olivier Jacobetti and launched in 1996. Here is a bottle from 2008. This is a powdery, airy rose violet that quickly reaches its heart notes and stays with them through the life of the scent. The iris and almond add depth and keep this very pretty scent from being overly sweet or frivolous. The rose violet is very clean and beautiful. Drôle de Rose illustrates how rose can be prominent with all the stale potpourri notes blended out. The beauty of the rose is extended by violet. My mother used to grow a rather old climbing rose, Albertine, which gave a phenomenal single crop of peachy pink blooms once a year. The flowers had a marvelous and powerful rose-violet scent. In 1982, the synthetic aroma chemicals, damascenones, were first used commercially. These highly potent rose ketones impart intense floral fruity qualities with notes of rose, dried or cooked fruit, and tobacco. Chanel's Cocoa, created by Jacques Polge, was launched in 1984, and the use of damascenones in cocoa elevates a spicy, polished mixture, giving it distinction and radiance. I love this scent, though I never knew anybody who wore it until the mid-90s. It's been grouped with the 80s power perfumes, but I think it's very refined, especially the Parfum. Here is a range of strengths from the 2000s. Though undoubtedly a powerful scent, I think cocoa is very easy to wear. The rose elements work wonderfully with the spices. Cocoa is so distinct and luscious, it's hard to imagine Chanel today, or the world, without it. Jacques Polge had taken the neon rose theme even further with his gigantic Diva for Ungaro in 1983. This scent has more rose, more animal notes, more everything. It moves somewhere towards the territory of Montana's Parfum de Peau. This bottle is from the late 90s. I don't care for the fan-shaped bottle, but I have a soft spot for the complex brew inside. Diva means goddess in Italian, but via opera and the world of celebrity, the word has taken on the meaning of somebody who's temperamental. Diva certainly has dramatic, bolder chords. It is, however, well proportioned and pleasing, provided you like big statement scents. The cardamom at the top and the iris at the base are skillfully used, achieving equilibrium and poise. In 1988, Estée Lauder launched Knowing, which was created by Harry Fremont. Here is a bottle from 2001. The sculptural bottle design is excellent. Knowing is a thing of beauty that's made with unique precision, which balances powerful elements harmoniously. The rosy damascenes and damascenones are blended with green notes, spices, florals, and animalics. The opening is distinctly boozy. There's what my grandfather would have called a whiff of the barmaid's apron. Very quickly, the distinct form of the scent comes through, becomes ever deeper and darker. There's a unique pittosporum note that's warm, narcotic, and floral. The fruity rose balances the darkness. This is a truly great scent. The resins and oak moss are wonderful. Knowing is an easy scent for both women and men to wear. I think this very Chypre rose has aged brilliantly. To illustrate further the versatility of roses, I want to look at a couple of scents I think of as having white rose notes. Rive Gauche from Yves Saint Laurent and Estée's White Linen. I talked about Rive Gauche in detail in my video on the 70s. This scent, created by Michael He in 1970, is so distinct because it marries a very pure rose with a modern blend of greens, aldehydes, and a metallic note. The tension between the ingredients is very striking. The beautiful snowy rose plays a starring role. Still popular today, Rive Gauche is one of the greats, made great by roses. White Linen was created in 1978 by Sophia Grosjean for Estée Lauder. Like many of the scents I've looked at today, White Linen shares not only rose elements, but also great originality. I first came across the perfume in my 20s when one of my flatmates wore it. She had on a taupe Max Mara type coat and smelled incredibly clean and grown up. I told her she smelled like pure white soap. In fact, I often dislike soapy notes. But White Linen has a kind of piercing brightness with very little sweetness, which is fascinating, especially in the Parfum, where the aldehydes are more subdued. I find the purifying radiance of the fragrance to be intriguing and rather addictive. The rose here, like most of the notes in White Linen, are very clean and intense. Another important rose scent, which is considered slightly mysterious, is Guerlain's Nehema. This is Guerlain's rose scent par excellence. It's been said that it contains no rose, having been composed with many elements to give a strong rose tone. The Guerlain website lists geraniol and citronolol, both of which give rosiness. Guerlain does in fact suggest that Bulgarian rose oils are used. The site explains the scent like this. Her fiery temperament makes her elusive, wildly attractive, just like Nehema, the princess of 1001 Nights. And Catherine Deneuve, in the movie The Diary of an Innocent Boy, so moved was Jean-Paul Guerlain by the actress's performance that he created a perfume for her, seductive and enigmatic. This amber elixir, that's both floral and fruity, proved untamable to the perfumer for a long time, so much so that it took 4 years and over 500 trials for him to pick this velvety rose absolute, brimming with peach accord and wrapped in patchouli and sandalwood. I've only ever owned these two parfums, one from the 90s and the other from the 2000s. I love the deep velvety texture of the scent and their luxurious rose lacune depth. But there's a problem for me, a distinct and rather dense dark chocolate note. No doubt this would add further to many people's enjoyment of Nehema. It's simply a matter of personal taste. Still, no collection of rose scents is complete without Nehema. Here are some more rose scents: Magritte from Carvan, Rose Amazon from Hermes, Rose Absolute by Yves Rocher, Red Roses Cologne from Jo Malone, and Tea Rose from the Perfume Workshop. Magritte, my signature in French, was created by Jean Carl way back in 1946. This bottle is from the 90s, and it's a somewhat generic, pleasant chiffre floral. This is a little better because it's a parfum de toilette. This bottle is a marvellous remaking from 2013. The Carvan website says, Carvan puts the glorious chiffre fragrance, born in 1946, back at the centre stage, 70 years after its creation, without touching the original formula. I can't verify if it's exactly the same, but it's a remarkable improvement, and a lovely rose permeates the scent, which is now full of quality and depth. There's a little spice in the resinous, musky base. I've worn this myself occasionally. The marketing of Magritte was very novel. Madame Carvan launched her signature fragrance with a spectacular aerial stunt. A private plane dropped thousands of tiny bottles attached to green and white striped parachutes directly into the centre of Paris, creating a tremendous interest in the scent. Rose Amazon was created by Jean-Claude Helena in 2014. The original Amazon came out in 1974. This update is an enormous rose scent, sparkling, tangy with lots of fruity berries. It's not an overly sweet composition. You would expect quality from Hermes, and it's here in abundance. The rose, the cassie, and the ambery woods add sophistication, but it's still a rather fun, almost effervescent scent. Rose Absolute dates from 2006 and is a creation of Christine Nagel. This is a different take on rose, a rather syrupy liqueur rose, warmed by cinnamon, with a slightly creamy tonka and patchouli base. There's a little lemon, which adds to the fragrant, slightly festive feel. Red Roses Cologne is a pretty successful attempt to create the damask scent of red garden roses. I'm thinking of roses like Deep Secret, Mr. Lincoln, and Nina Harkness. Here are a couple of early attempts to capture red roses from the 70s, Yardley's Red Roses and Royal Rose by Lonthric. Jo Malone's Red Rose is built around Bulgarian damask rose. There's a touch of lemon and mint for freshness. There's an interesting beeswax note in the base that keeps the scent from being very sweet. I like the scent, but it illustrates that it's impossible to capture the full experience of smelling a heady scented rose on a warm day. It's slightly soulless. It suggests Gertrude Stein's line, "Rose is a rose is a rose is a rose." Magnificent as it is, rose requires careful treatment in skilled hands. To finish, here is Tea Rose from the Perfume Workshop, created by Annie Byzantian in 1977. This rose is even nearer to garden rose scent than the Jo Malone. Several types of rose are listed as ingredients, including Bulgarian rose and tea rose. There's chamomile and geranium too. It's certainly pretty realistic, but this scent still carries a slight twang of desiccated potpourri, which takes away from the fresh feel. Two of my favourite roses, not covered here, are from Frédéric Malle. Une Rose, now Rose Tonnerre, and Lipstick Rose. Head over to my video on Frédéric Malle if you're interested in the description of these two. It goes without saying that I could only cover a small fraction of the many rose scents that have been made over the years. I've enjoyed experiencing these scents again and marvelling at the skill of perfumers in using roses to add gorgeousness and life to great fragrances, while mostly overcoming the snags that roses can present. Rose has been the major note in many symphonic, beautiful perfumes. It appears in many of the greatest scents ever created. The importance of perfumery, its reach and economic value, is unimaginable without roses. The world continues to fall in love with roses and their smell. Capturing the beauty of the bloom as part of a sophisticated scent is an art that continues to mesmerize perfumers, but sometimes defeats them.